My name is Patrick Doyle, reporting with the Daily Aztec. I'm sitting here with San Diego City Council President and Congressional candidate for California's 53rd District, Georgette Gómez. Councilmember Gómez, thank you so much for being with me.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to interview me, Patrick. I appreciate it.
I want to start with a question about the economy. By the time you would be sworn into Congress in January of next year, hopefully COVID-19 cases will be decreasing. What is the specific plan you have to quickly kickstart the economy and prevent another recession?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely need to ensure that we are recovering from COVID and making sure that we have the systems in place, healthcare wise, not only have the vaccine, but also ensure that we're learning from this, from this healthcare crisis that we're going through, recognizing that we still have a healthcare system that is not fully funded to address a healthcare crisis when it comes to be. So we need to ensure that we are investing in healthcare, but also investing in addressing the lack of having access to healthcare and making it accessible to our community members. There is an opportunity to really uplift the whole conversation of creating a universal healthcare. Sorry, I'm trying to shut down my phone.
No worries.
Trying to, I think the opportunity to really focus on advancing universal healthcare is a perfect time right now, because we're learning several things. One, because of the economic crisis that has been created, we have learned that depending on your employer to provide healthcare is not the most sustainable, because it leads to other issues that we're trying to deal with right now. And we don't have a system that is in place. So overall, I think it's a perfect opportunity to really advance the conversation of universal healthcare and ensure that we are moving towards that and making sure that we uplift the crisis on that. Now going into the economy, I think there's several things that we really need to address. Want to make sure that as we're restoring the economy, as we're issuing support for local businesses to ensure that they're keeping their doors open by providing relief, we have learned pretty quickly that some of the rules that are being imposed by Congress, by DC, are not reflected of the actual businesses that need the support. I have smaller shops that are not able to have access to that relief. So we really need to evaluate the criteria that is being tied to the emergency relief that is being handed down, because it's not very accessible, it's not equitable. We are relieving bigger corporations. I would question if they need the relief versus a small mom and pop coffee shop in my district that fought so hard in opening up the doors, and now that they have it, they're in the brink of having to close it permanently. And we have a huge situation like that, and I can definitely tell you firsthand that we're working with a lot of those small mom and pop shops to ensure that they have access to the relief that is being handed down, and we're working with them to ensure that they have access to some support to be able to navigate the application system.
So you think to
So
kickstart the economy, we should provide more relief to small businesses?
we need to provide more relief to small businesses as we're bringing back the economy. We need to rethink, San Diego is very dependent on the tourism industry. That really has impacted local government and how their government is taxing an industry that has been impacted in the way that it's going to come back. We don't know when it's going to come back. We don't know. So we need to start investing, diversifying our portfolio to ensure that there are better paths for other jobs that need to be brought to our economy. So we need to start diversifying our portfolio of what types of economies we're investing in our region, and that translates to the whole nation. And we also need to ensure that we are supporting the creation of universal health care. We need to invest and sick leave and pay, which we need more of. And one of the biggest things for adults or parents that have children, we need to advance childcare uh, support. That's been one of the things that are preventing people from going back to work because the schools have closed. Children are being kept at home, and families don't have the luxury of paying additional money to have childcare. So that's another area that we really need to advance in supporting.
I
It's
do have a
something that
question
we need
about that
to
in a
do.
minute.
Okay. So
What
all of it is a package in order for us to really advance and move forward.
I'll go ahead and ask that question now then, since you
Hmm.
brought it up. I'm glad you did bring it up. It's about reopening schools. So
Yeah.
there's been a lot of discussion lately about whether schools should reopen, with President Trump even suggesting withholding federal funding from schools which do not open completely for in-person learning. Do you think schools need to reopen in the fall? And if so, do you think the government should provide increased funding for them to reopen safely?
Well, I think that if we are serious about opening schools, which I think it's important, but I think it needs to be done the right way. And the right way means that we need to invest in schools to be able to provide the necessary safe environment for kids to learn. That means possibly smaller classes, and which means more teachers getting hired. The school districts are going to need more resources to be able to do that. We need to ensure that we are supporting nurses to be hired as well because they need to be available. And we need to ensure that there's possibly the possibility of making sure that schools are expanding to ensure that they're upgrading their air system filtration. We have older infrastructures that schools operate. They might not have actual filtration or air filtration. They need to be upgraded. So if we are rethinking of it, which I think learning is something that is important, but we need to do it properly. And in order for us to do that, we need to ensure that there's more resources available for the proper infrastructure, the proper investment, and the learning, and making sure that we're investing in teachers and the aides and nurses to ensure that it's being done correctly. We can't just demand the school districts open up. You're, it's on you to figure out how do you handle it, but you have until this date to do it. And best of luck. You're not getting any support from us. That's not the right way.
Hmm. All right, I appreciate it. My next question is about something that's very important to college students like myself and some of my colleagues and people who've been out of college for years that are still dealing with student debt. Last year, MEC7 Investigates postulated that based on data from the National Student Loan Average, over 400,000 San Diegans likely still have student loan debt. What is your plan to ease the burden of already existing student loan debt in your district?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. Right now, under COVID, there's been an immediate moratorium on payments, and I think that was the right approach, just because we saw the students were going to be there was going to be a huge impact on the economy, and I thought that was the right thing to do. We need to extend that to ensure that there's an additional the moratorium continues until we figure out the economic recovery, the economy recovering back, and make sure that schools are coming back in the proper way. So that needs to happen. And I do know that the Heroes Act, there's some mentioning of some student payment moratorium, and that's really important for the Senate to move forward and then make sure that they're moving forward in adoption. So that's just a piece related to COVID. The other piece is I'm a strong supporter of introducing loan forgiveness, and I think it needs to occur for people that are under certain economic low-income community members, students that are in the low-income bracket, as well as medium income. I think those two areas those two categories, we should think about introducing loan forgiveness for folks. I think it's the right thing to do. I think if we were to do that, we're also investing and infusing in the economy because students have income, but instead of spending it, they're paying their loans or they're having to declare bankruptcy. These are new folks that are being introduced into the workforce, and it can really prevent you from advancing or getting future jobs or being able to enter into the home ownership. I think by having a system that is instead of lifting students and investing in the careers that they fought so hard in trying to get to, we need to be very mindful and making sure that in order for us to invest in future professional students, that we need to ensure that they have the proper infrastructure. And by doing so, by eliminating debt and eliminating the loans that are having to be taken because of the cost of higher of education.
Speaking of
uh,
higher education, do you believe the government should expand its efforts to help people pay for higher education? And if
what was that?
so, so speaking of higher education, do you believe the government should expand its efforts to help people pay for it? And if
Oh,
so, how?
hmm most definitely. I mean, I'm a product of someone that was able to get FAFSA when I went through college, and because
Mhm.
I qualified, and I ended up getting a loan, but it was very little. But at the time when I went to school, the fees of my 4 year education was way lower than what it is now. I mean, the cost of going through school is substantial to the point where it's leading folks to having to take major loans because they're not getting the proper support if they qualify. So I think that needs to be reconsidered and really grow the pool of assistance that is available for folks. And I think that's part of what needs to occur for sure.
So, do you support tuition-free community college?
Yes, I do. And once again, I think I support it 100%. If there are some challenges in terms of, well, how do we pay for it? I think at least minimally you start by targeting a certain sector of the population. If you qualify, if you're at this level economically, you will right away qualify for it. But ideally, it would just be free. But if we have to make decisions because there's not enough money, then you create different phases of
Mhm.
based on income.
I do appreciate that sentiment. Now, I have one more question, and it's about an issue important to me, you, every San Diegan, about homelessness.
Hmm.
You say on your website that you will, quote, be a firm advocate for increased public housing assistance, federal grants for affordable housing projects, and expanding funding for the Section 8 housing program, end quote. Do you believe that expanding funding for Section 8 is a viable long-term solution or more of a remedy until we can build more affordable homes?
I think it's both. I mean, I can tell you, I'm very entrenched in affordable housing and making housing affordable for folks. The cost of building a unit in California is extremely expensive.
Mhm.
We're not talking about, I mean, just any type of unit. It's just expensive, period. So we need to figure out how do you lower that. And that, I mean, there are certain things that one is able to do at the local government, at the federal government, at the state level as well. So we need to work on that. But also, one of the things that we used to have redevelopment, which allowed the local governments to capture a percentage of property taxes to dedicate it to affordable housing development. That got revoked under Governor Davis. And he decided to take that money and put it into the state's budget. That's the
Mhm.
reason the state has now a healthy budget. Well, right now it's no longer that because of COVID, and they've been utilizing a lot of the savings that occurred because the elimination of redevelopment. But what that did was that took away the local funding to partner with developers to leverage other money, whether it being money from the state or from the or from the federal government, to help the development of affordable housing. That got wiped out. So that created another challenge to be able to develop more housing. So we've been very uncompetitive. We don't compete as much to comparison to the Bay Area in comparison to LA
Mhm.
and getting funding from federal government. So we need to be able to do that. So we're exploring some ways of creating a local pot of money right now to be able to go after that money. But then the other piece that we need to do at the federal level is that HUD needs to redo its formula in how they issue the money to local cities. Uh, our population, the need of affordable housing has not been reflected in that formula. So we've been getting less money, although the need has been increasing because of this formula. It's not reflected of that. So we
So
haven't been getting
given
our
that
fair.
increasing need, what specifically are your plans to acquire these funds for Section 8 and the other housing projects that you propose supplying this money for?
Right. So that's why that formula needs to be, we need to update it. So that's one thing that needs to occur.
Okay.
Because then it would be reflective of where the need needs to go, where the money needs to go. What we were able to do, I worked with the Housing Commission just last year, and we were able to advocate at the federal level with HUD. We were able to get additional money to infuse into Section 8. I believe we were able to get about $10 million new money that helped to actually update the vouchers. We weren't able to increase the voucher amounts, the number of vouchers we were giving, but we were
Mhm.
at least were able to update the dollar amount that was being given to voucher holders already. And that was critical because that also was creating another layer of a problem that the rents are going up, the vouchers are not getting updated. So there was a bigger gap of what people needed to pay. And some folks were having to have to move from their units because they couldn't afford them. And because we're not building enough affordable housing, it was just creating this really bad cycle. So the reason we went to try to get more money to update the voucher amount was because of that. And now we were able to increase the voucher amount, but it's not even enough. So we need to do that. And in order for us to do that, that formula is really critical because then the money that comes to us will be reflected over the population. After we do that, then we also need to fund HUD with more money because the demand is greater. And they've not been getting, their budget has not increased.
Mhm.
So that also needs to occur to ensure that there's more resources to be able to distribute to a situation that is occurring.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Councilmember Gomez, candidate for California's 53rd. Thank you so much for sitting down with me. Good luck in November.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.